Hi.
Hello. More testimonies from Ray Franz's In Search of Christian Freedom from those impacted by crisis of conscience. Ray goes on, a young woman who had spent many years as a full-time pioneer and had later been a Watchtower headquarters staff member reveals the difficulty that transition from being a devoted organization member to living in a truly personal relationship with God can bring. Writing from Pennsylvania, she says, quote, "Your account of what transpired organizationally as well as personally was not only an eye and heart opener for me, but also confirmed much of what I have felt throughout the years. Before reading your book, I was not aware of the great influence the organization had in my own life, even during the time of my subsequent disassociation. Before, I felt so lost, so unworthy of any more having a personal relationship with Jehovah and Christ Jesus, because I no longer had the organization. Now, for the first time in a very, very long time, I feel free to worship Jehovah through Jesus apart from the organization. I can now approach Jehovah in prayer and be his servant. The tears flowed from my eyes and the ache has finally been lifted from my heart."
Her following paragraph contains complimentary remarks about the way the book was written. In harmony with what I stated earlier, I include it for only one reason, and that is because it illustrates something that has been true of so many of those writing, that they are not in favor of vindictive literature against Jehovah's Witnesses, and that rather than animosity, they retain an affection towards those still in that organization. Her letter continues, so, quote, "I was very much impressed with the manner in which you wrote your book. The love you had, and still have, for the brotherhood comes through. Your expressions were not bitter or vindictive, but merely presented the facts as kindly and lovingly as possible. During my association with the organization, I met some truly wonderful, extraordinary people, and many of my experiences were memorable and happy. Much of what I have been taught through the organization is Bible-based and still embedded deep in my mind and heart. For these things I have great appreciation. However, I too have seen and felt the effects in my own life and that of others when organizational laws dictate to people's conscience, thereby superseding the Bible. This concept has played havoc with the lives of men, women, and children alike."
A letter from another woman, writing from a Midwestern part of the United States, illustrates some of the havoc experienced. Quote, "I left the organization in 1980, although I just merely didn't go to meetings. Wouldn't you know, it couldn't be just that. My mother wrote a letter to me in 81 stating that she could no longer associate or socialize with me because I did not attend meetings. Of course, my brothers followed suit. Our daughter was killed in January 1983. Mother did not come to the funeral and sent no condolences. I'm raising my daughter's 4 children, and I've learned the hard way who my true friends are. People that I did not even know expressed sympathy and helped me with the children. They gave money, time, and anything they could to help. I felt so humbled to think I had turned my back for so many years on non-witness neighbors and relatives who were so willing to help us. They never stopped loving me. I can't tell you the times I cried over the many years I wasted shunning them as worldlings."
I was baptized in 1946, and about 1971 I started to realize things weren't appearing very Christian. I searched the scriptures and could not find any basis for the things happening in the congregation. About that time, I read a book by Milton Kovitz, is that how you say it, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Fundamental Liberties of a Free People. I began to wonder how the Watchtower Society could fight so hard for freedoms under the Constitution and deny those same freedoms to others, freedoms guaranteed under the same Constitution, like the right to free speech, rights of privacy, etc. No allowance was made for individual conscience. With the exception of one or two, the men in the congregation were more interested in obtaining positions of authority than praying for and obtaining true discernment. Commitments at meetings were just a
Comments.
Comments at meetings were just a mere parroting of the Watchtower's printed page. No concern for those with weaknesses, just an overwhelming compulsion to keep the organization clean. I have forgotten so many things, names, dates, so I can't write with real authority the way you have. That carries no regret. I'm glad it's fading. One more thing. I have found it almost impossible to pray. I wish I could, but I don't know how to develop a personal relationship with God and Christ. My old hurt feelings about the organization surface when I try to pray. After reading your book, I was standing at the sink feeling such sorrow for those that may be trying to have the courage they need, and I ask God to help them. The first real prayer in a long time. Thank you.
I think we can all relate to all of this.
Yes.
Even the prayer part.
Yes.
You feel like you haven't got God anymore.
Yeah. It's everything has to be looked at freshly. You're starting over. You're starting to evaluate whether anything that you had or were doing was correct.
And the finding of unconditional love where you least expect to find it.
Yeah, with the neighbors and relatives. I think we could testify to that. During that period of time, because you're leaving something that you were so committed to, and you spoke about with such conviction to your relatives, your non-witness relatives, and yet when we were going through that struggle, David's parents, who were never witnesses, were very supportive, very kind, very loving, and seemed to feel as much pain about the loss as we did, because they knew how convicted we were and convinced that it was true.
And my family in England, during the next 10 years of your life, were the family you really no longer had.
Yeah, they were very supportive too. They showed such love and acceptance when we were there with them visiting.
So that was all unexpected, but such a tremendous grace on God's part to give us more than we thought we would have after we left. And I think that's an experience that we hear from many ex-witnesses, that the life that they have now is richer than they could have expected.
Yeah, we can testify to that.
And in the next segment, Ray hears from people outside the Watchtower, including some Mormons.
Yes.
And sums up his feedback, the feedback that he got in the 8 or 9 years between the two books.